And then you simultaneously are saying housing is expensive because they're moving back home. Zoning restrictions and limits on constructions don't just make cities expensive.
They do not have any effect on pricing. And if they do, it's minimal. The thing that is increasing that cost of housing is these real estate companies buying up hundreds of homes, thousands of homes, and then trying to make a return on that investment via charging more for the homes. And these people who do this don't understand what the average person makes. And if they do understand, they don't care. So they price things to such a fucking unrealistic degree that no one can afford it. And they alienate men from even buying a house. How is a man supposed to work these days? You go to apply for a job, they say, do you have any job experience? No, I don't. Well, we can't hire you. Well, how am I supposed to get job experience? Well, why don't you have any connections? Well, what if your family's poor and you don't have connections? Well, I guess you're screwed. Well, what about Muhammad over here? He got a work visa. He's allowed to come over here and work. Well, Muhammad has a work visa. You don't. Well, what about this black guy here? I mean, he's working here. Well, affirmative action. And so we have all these systems in place which disadvantage the white man. And so we look at another factor too. How is a white man supposed to have a job when he's competing with a bunch of foreigners who are being immigrated en masse to come over here? And these companies do not have to pay the foreigners the same amount as the white man. So they're disadvantaging the white man via sending in all of these foreigners who, again, they could pay substandard wages to. So, again, there's all the incentive in the world for these people to come in here and get jobs because they don't have to pay them as much. And you have to think also that women working in the modern era has been nothing but a disadvantage to men because they expect men to buy houses and provide for them, but they also don't want to contribute financially. They don't want to work. They want a provider. And I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world, but you shouldn't have had the right to work then. You want the right to work, but you don't want to work. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So all you really did was make it harder on men to buy a house, to buy a car. Because what you're doing by, working or being a part of the workforce is you're increasing the amount of money that goes into the system. And people who sell houses are going to think, well, the women and men can work. We're going to price things according to how we think a dual income house should work. And so we get higher prices on housing. We get higher prices on goods. So food costs more. But the reality being is that women working hasn't been a material benefit to men. It hasn't even been a material benefit to themselves. It's been a material detriment to themselves because now things cost more, which affects everybody. Black, white, woman, men, Muslim. It affects every group of people. But this isn't an anti-immigration video, but I really do hate immigration. Because people don't understand what it means. If you're in an area, it could be rural, urban, I don't care. If you're in an area and you have there's only a certain amount of buildings. You don't have infinite buildings, right? There's only so many buildings in this area or in that area because there's a designated space that makes up your town or your city, and there's only certain buildings. Only so many buildings. And there's only so many buildings that are for jobs, and there's already so many only so many jobs that are available. There's only so many positions that can be filled, right? So when you bring over a large swath of people, you're taking up positions and thing. You're taking up positions and jobs that could be filled by the white man. And of course, this doesn't really affect your rich liberals because they don't really have to deal with the brunt of that. Your Hassan Pikers never have to struggle. They have a rich father, who's like a billionaire in Turkey. They have a rich uncle. They don't have to deal with the brunt of that. And so you could sit from your desk, you could sit from your table or your computer, shock your dog, live in isolation of the effects of the policies you're prescribing. That's the thing that you can do when you're rich. You can brunt the cost of bad decisions with the amount of money you have. And so when socialists, for example, say capitalism is a failing system and that it has many faults, that's what they mean. They mean that it's failing in practice, and the only way it's being held up is through the brunt cost of money. The economy's failing, everything's failing, but you're able to hold it up just by brunting the cost with huge assortments of wealth. I know people who do this sort of thing. You can have somebody, for example, who has a shop or has a business that they can't afford to upkeep, but they can rely on somebody else to fund the profits of it, like a parent, and they can essentially keep that shop going, even if that shop isn't really making any money, and even if that shop isn't logistically viable. Here's another factor we don't talk about either in terms of economy, is that you can't start a business anymore. You're going to say, well, I started a business. Let's think about it logically. You want to start a pizza company. Good luck. There's Godfathers, there's Pizza Hut, there's Little Caesars. These are set up brands. And if I'm a consumer, unbiased, right? Am I going to waste my money on a pizza I don't know I like? I want to eat, right? I want to have a food I know I like. I want to have a food I know I'm going to eat. And I don't want to try out a new food option if I know I'm not going to eat it. Maybe if you're somewhat better off, you want to like test out food options and you're not living check to check, or you have the spare money to like try stuff out. I don't. A lot of people don't. So we'll go to the Pizza Huts. We'll go to the Little Caesars over your no-name pizza shop you started up last week. I get it's a struggle. I get you want to make money because you're probably not the most well off. But I'm also poor. So I don't want to go to your establishment, waste money on a food I'm not going to fucking eat, when I could go to Pizza Hut or I could go to Little Caesars and I'll order a pizza I know I'll eat. And I know that's not just me, right? That's why there's a lot of smaller shops that fail. And it's hard to compete when you got all these big companies that have a reliable food item. They have a reliable menu. You could go there and you know you'll get something you like. And the problem too is that people aren't willing, or they don't have enough money to invest in businesses either. Like, the people I know who started businesses are already kind of wealthy. And there's people that have the aesthetic of wealth. By that I mean, maybe their dad bought them a home 20 years ago, but they're living check to check. Like, they have the assets, but they have no money. So there's people like that too. But when we're talking about younger men, these men have none of that. I can't speak to every single person on planet Earth because I'm not every person on planet Earth. I can only speak to my own experiences and what I personally know. But I'm not in line for a fortune. I'm in line for nothing. I don't have a family which has a lot of wealth. I don't have a family which has a lot of things to give me. And anything that they would give me would be given to my family, my upper generation, my aunts, my mother, my that sort of thing. And with my position, I don't think I will ever benefit from that sort of thing. I'm the off child of my parents, so when the inheritance inevitably goes to my mother, it will only go to her 3 kids. I know that isn't a situation for everybody, but there's so much disadvantagement in society, and you get people who are like me and they don't have much to gain via living in society, and so they become antisocial and they hate the government and they hate businesses and they hate all these people in power. And I can't blame these people. I'm at a certain point in my sort of life right now where I feel like I don't really care if Canada took over, because what is this country even doing for me? What is this country doing for me? I can't get views on YouTube. I struggle at getting a job. I can't achieve anything. And there's so many people like me who have literally nothing to gain from this society. If it got taken over, we wouldn't lose anything. We would lose nothing if America took over Canada. Hell, most Americans wouldn't lose anything if America got taken over. Before, if you had a country which negatively affected the people and didn't serve the people, you would have a French Revolution where your queens got beheaded. But we can do this in the modern day, where our modern day kings and queens are allowed to do whatever they want, have no positive effect on the native inhabitants of the land, and it's A-okay. We can disadvantage men in every single sort of way possible, and then somehow still blame men. Deny them inheritance. Deny them jobs via affirmative action, outsourcing, and DEI hiring. Deny them access to females, deny them access to mating, via not being economically viable, via not having the best genes. And, I mean, you could say, well, women have the right to choose. Okay, they have the right to choose, but, a lot of them are ending up single, 40 years old, with cats. So their right to choose isn't even helping them. But who cares? Right? Liberals will value the right to fucking choose if it kills them. They value freedom so much more than security that they gladly say, okay, I want a murderer to have a gun to murder everybody because it's his freedom to do that. It's fucking ridiculous.